Have you ever stayed in a situation slowly destroying you because someone called it God's will? Countless believers carry wounds inflicted not by enemies, but by those claiming to love them. Wounds justified with Scripture, sanctified with spiritual language, normalized as the cost of discipleship. But here is what might surprise you. The Bible never once commands you to remain where your body, mind, or spirit is being systematically violated. Both Scripture and the profound spiritual insights of Edgar Cayce reveal something radically different. Protecting your divine vessel is not selfishness, it is stewardship. Today, we are dismantling 7 toxic behaviors disguised as Christian virtues, revealing what Scripture actually says about your worth, your boundaries, and your God-given right to peace. Manipulation never announces itself with obvious cruelty. Instead, it wraps itself in Scripture, speaks the language of sacrifice, and convinces you that your conscience is the enemy. It tells you that questioning authority is rebellion, that setting boundaries is selfishness, that your inner knowing is simply your flesh resisting God's will. But God is not a God of disorder, but of peace. When confusion becomes your constant companion, when guilt is the primary tool shaping your behavior, you are not experiencing godly leadership. You are experiencing control. Edgar Cayce taught that free will is humanity's most sacred gift, granted directly by the divine, and no earthly authority has the right to override that gift through manipulation or spiritual coercion. Write in the comments below, "I release what was never mine to carry." You have absorbed their anger, carried consequences of their addiction, shouldered blame for their cruelty, believing your endurance might finally produce their transformation. But Scripture draws a clear boundary that religion often blurs. The one who sins is the one who will face consequences. Each soul creates its own spiritual debt and must work through its own lessons. Cayce's understanding of karma illuminates this biblical principle perfectly. You cannot evolve another person through your suffering. When you enable destructive behavior by shielding someone from consequences, you are actually interfering with their spiritual growth. His presence never made people calculate every word or walk on eggshells. Calculate emotional responses before reacting. Brace yourself mentally before every interaction. This is not love. This is survival mode dressed as devotion. Scripture makes this crystal clear. God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. When a relationship consistently produces dread rather than rest, that spirit does not originate from the divine. Cayce identified fear as one of the most destructive forces in human experience, not just emotionally, but vibrationally and spiritually. Chronic fear lowers your energetic frequency, blocks healing, and creates an environment where spiritual growth becomes nearly impossible. Jesus brought clarity even in correction, never terror. Write in the comments, "I choose my calling over comfort." But Paul asked the question, cutting through all confusion. Am I trying to win human approval or God's approval? If I was still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. Cayce's entire life exemplified this principle. He faced ridicule for his gifts, opposition from religious institutions, skepticism from the scientific community, yet remained faithful to what his soul knew was true. Noah looked foolish building an ark. Moses faced constant criticism. Jeremiah was rejected by the very ones he prophesied to, but their faithfulness was never measured by approval ratings. True spirituality demands both inner transformation and outer justice working together, not one without the other. You brought up real harm only to be told to just pray about it or have more faith, as if your pain reflects spiritual immaturity rather than a response to genuine injustice. This is spiritual bypassing, and it has become so normalized that many believers no longer recognize it as manipulation. But Jesus never used spirituality to dismiss suffering. He addressed it directly, confronted it boldly, and demanded those causing harm face consequences. Cayce taught that prayer without action is incomplete, that faith divorced from real-world transformation is essentially dead. James confirms this. Faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead. You have seen this in spaces where financial sacrifices are demanded beyond reason, where guilt and fear extract resources, where your giving is tied directly to God's favor or punishment. Watch how Jesus responded when he encountered this very thing. He drove money changers from the temple with righteous anger, declaring they had turned his father's house into a den of robbers. Case, despite worldwide fame and demand for his gifts, lived modestly and often gave readings freely. His decisions reflected a fundamental understanding that spiritual gifts are not commodities for personal enrichment. When financial pressure creates anxiety, shame, or threats of divine punishment, you are not experiencing biblical stewardship. You are experiencing spiritual extortion. Write in the comments, God's love is not for sale. You felt this if you have ever been told your friends do not understand your calling, your family is holding you back spiritually, that only people within a specific group truly understand you. This isolation masquerades as spiritual devotion, but Scripture paints a completely different picture. Two are better than one, Ecclesiastes tells us, because if either falls down, one can help the other up. Community is not optional in God's design. It is protective and essential. Case never isolated himself or demanded others cut ties with those questioning his work. Abusive systems fear outside perspective because healthy relationships and diverse viewpoints threaten control. Jesus sent disciples out in pairs, never alone. When a relationship insists you sever connections with anyone raising concerns, warning bells should be deafening. Write in the comments, I trust God with their journey, where you tell yourself that leaving a harmful situation might cause someone to lose their faith or face eternal consequences. But Scripture makes this abundantly clear. Each of us will give an account of ourselves to God, not for others, for ourselves. Your spiritual integrity is your responsibility. Their spiritual journey is theirs. Case's readings emphasize this principle repeatedly. No one can walk another person's path or answer for another's choices before the divine. Jesus himself, the Son of God, did not save everyone he encountered. The rich young ruler walked away, and Jesus let him go without guilt or desperate pursuit. Trusting God with another person's journey while protecting your own spiritual health is not abandonment. You are not here by accident. The fact that these truths resonate with you, that something in your spirit recognizes the difference between authentic faith and toxic patterns disguised as devotion, tells me you are ready for a different kind of spiritual journey. One where boundaries are not betrayal, where protecting your divine vessel is not selfishness, where walking away from harm is sometimes the most honest way to walk toward God. If this message landed in your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for content that challenges religious distortions and helps believers distinguish between what Scripture actually says and what controlling systems claim it says. Leave a comment and let me know. This message was meant for me. There is a video right here going even deeper into rebuilding your spiritual foundation after recognizing these toxic patterns.